Okay, so you should have watched the video about the fiddler crab. And so we can think about, well, how does this fiddler crab end up with one really large claw and one really short claw? So it could be that all of the crabs had short claws, and over time they use that one large claw, and therefore their offsprings will grow large claws. Or it could be that at the beginning we have a variety of crabs, some with larger, slightly larger or smaller claws, and stress from the environment causes only that large claw organisms to survive, and therefore their offsprings are going to also have large claws. Okay, and we can kind of look at our evidence that this is what we see going on. Okay, but one thing that we need to think about is what would happen if all of the crabs had short claws at the beginning. And because of this, in this particular environment with this particular stress, it could be that none of them survive, or ones that have slightly larger claws would survive. And over time, they get larger and larger and larger because of that variation. And it could lead to extinction. But again, that variation is important for that natural selection to happen. Okay, so looking at evolution, evolution is related to our idea of natural selection. Evolution is just the idea that alleles and their frequency change over time. And this is usually caused by natural selection, and can eventually lead to something called speciation, where we have different species being produced. And just as a reminder, alleles are different variations of the same gene, so like different colors of eyes or different characteristics. So here we have the allele population, or the allele frequency, at the beginning, where we have half and half of our different genotypes. And then over time, because it's being targeted by the predators, our allele frequency is changing. So that's the idea of evolution, is that the frequency and the alleles are changing, and it is because of natural selection in this case, because nature, in this case the predators, are selecting which organisms survive or do not survive. Okay, so natural selection, when certain traits, which again are coded by genes in our alleles, are more advantageous than others, they allow the organism to survive and have more offspring. Another example is our peppered moths, which you can see here. We have dark and more speckled moths. There's actually a moth here that's speckled and dark moths. Okay, it's also called the survival of the fittest. And again, our changes in that gene pool or our allele frequency lead to better fitness, better reproductive success, and therefore that adaptation being more prevalent because it's suited for the environment. Okay, so a couple things need to happen in order for natural selection and evolution to occur. One thing is over reproduction. So there have to be more offspring born than are able to live to maturity. Okay, and because of that, the ones who live are better suited for the environment and can survive. But if everyone is surviving, all of the traits can be passed on. There's none that are being advantageous over other ones. So that is one thing that has to happen for natural selection. We also have to have genetic variation, as we mentioned before. We have to have differences so that some phenotype is more helpful or more advantageous for the organism to survive. Or the opposite, where we have traits that reduce the chance of survival, or adaptive traits that increase the chance of survival. They're not good or bad. They just are increasing the chance of survival or reducing the chance of survival. And again, these traits could change depending on the situation or the environment. We also need to have competition to occur. So they have to be able to compete for limited resources. And there also has to be different reproductive successes. So organisms that fit to their environment, that have the best adaptations, are likely to reproduce and pass down those genes. And whatever the gene is, the trait is we're looking at, has to be inherited. Otherwise, it will not be selected through natural selection. Okay, the rate of evolution is definitely affected by changes in the environment. So populations are less likely to evolve in an environment that is remaining stable over long periods of time because those organisms are fit for the environment. So if the habitat looks like this now, and then later it's the phenotypes are going to be very similar of the organisms over time. But if we have a change in our population or a change in the environment, like this is showing a volcano eruption happened and it changed the environment, then it's going to cause evolution to happen more quickly. This is what we call selective pressure. So selective pressure are those factors in the environment, biotic or abiotic, remember living or non-living, that affect the success of the organisms. It could be disease, predation, climate, food availability, so on. And the phenotype that's being selected for can be selected against when the environment changes. So sometimes that environment can cause the species to change rapidly. Okay, so that's our intro to natural selection.